friends, and welcome back to the channel. This is episode 4 of my beginner series, and in this episode I want to focus on this tool called the form tool. And before we jump into buttons and tools, let's quickly understand what this actually is. Up until now, everything we've done in Fusion 360 was very precise: sketches, dimensions, extrude, very controlled, very mechanical. The form tool is different. This is how you create shapes, things that are smooth, curved, and natural looking, stuff like vases, sculptures, handles, and anything that flows. And honestly, once you understand this, it opens a completely different side of Fusion 360. So let's jump straight into this form. This is the create form button. So if you start with a fresh new design without making any sketches, without anything, even if you've never used Fusion 360, you can still follow this video. So we go to create form and we click this icon. And as you can see, when we click it, the icon color changes. If you click down on this menu, you get all the shapes that you can actually create. So you can create a sphere and work with a sphere. You can create a cylinder, a plane, and everything in between. As always, if you hover over a tool, Fusion 360 will give you all the details about that specific tool. So let's start using this tool and let's start creating something very, very basic. And we're going to start with a cylinder. If we select this option, we can select a plane, and onto this plane we're going to start from the middle. You create let's say 70mm circle, and it will automatically create you a cylinder. And you have a few options on this side. So the first couple of options are obviously the diameter. You can change this to, let's say, 50 if you want, or the diameter faces. So this is very helpful when you have an irregular shape. As a circle, it doesn't matter that much, but if you have a funny looking shape, the more faces you have, the more accurate the extrusion will be. You have the height faces. So at the moment you have 1, 2, 3, 4 faces. If we change this up, it will add a few faces. And you can set the height from here. Let's say we're happy with this cylinder and say OK to it. Now, when you have this cylinder, this is not really an object yet. So at the moment is just a form, and you can see it highlighted in purple. If we finish this form, it will turn into a shell. So this is not yet a body, because this one is just a shell with 0 thickness, and it only shows you the actual part of the shell, not the thickness. If you want to add thickness to this, you can just select the shell, go to create, and just select thicken. And when you select this, you can do a 5mm thickness, say OK. But let's go back to the form, because this is a very boring body and we don't like that. Let's create something more organic. So how do you modify this? You can actually modify any line, any face, or any dot into this form. And this is the tool that will change Fusion 360 from being let's say mechanical and precise object into a more organic shape. So let's click this button called edit form. So obviously if you on modify, you can have a whole bunch of options here. These are all the things that you can do with either a face or a line or a point. So what we want to work with is this tool called edit form. If you want to add one of your tools to your toolbar, so you see in my case I have modify. On the modify section I only have the edit form. If I want to add the let's say the fill hole tool, I can just go to these 3 dots, click on it and just say pin to taskbar. There you go, we will have another tool added to our modify section. Today we're gonna work mainly with this edit form tool, and when you click this tool you get the menu up here. And don't worry too much about all of these options because these are more, let's say, advanced options. The one thing that you need to know to be able to start working with this is the selection filters. So if you click this option, then you can work with the vertices, which are essentially points into your form. If you select this edge, you're going to work with edges, so you can select one edge or all that circle by double clicking one of these lines. So that selects your whole perimeter, let's say. If you double click on one of these lines, it's going to select your whole line, horizontal or vertical. If you use this option, that's going to be face. You can click on an edge or a vertex, which we're going to call points to make things more simple. Or my favorite tool is all of them. So then you don't worry about which one you're going to click. You're just going to go and click the one you want, and you don't have to change between those three. So when you select a line or a point or a face, you get all of these options. And I want to go through them one by one very quickly and just show you how they work and how you could implement them in your design. So let's double click this one of these lines, and that will get me the whole perimeter selected. And let's start with the arrows. So the arrows are, again, very simple. They follow the coordinates X, Y, Z. And if you grab this arrow, for example, you will move that whole circle onto the Z coordinate, and you'll see everything behind it adjust to what you've moved. We can also move it a bit on the X axis, so we can move it that way, or we can move it backwards, and we can also move it on the Y axis, so we can go that way and that way. We can also grab it from these squares, and that will give you a freedom of movement on the X and Y axis. So anywhere you move it, it will stay on that X, Y axis. If you grab it from this one, it will move it on XZ, so you can move it up and you can move it that way, but you can't really move it on the Y axis. Or if you grab it from here, you will always also move it on that plane. So if you want to move it on just one axis, you grab it from the arrow. If you want to move it on that plane, let's say, you grab it from that plane. So let's go back to where we start. Let's go Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. And we go back to the beginning. And let's select this circle again, and go back to edit form, and I want to show you the corners and these lines. So as you can see, you have this square in the middle that, like I said, it moves that circle onto that plane, and you can also have these small lines. So these lines, basically, they can make your shape bigger or smaller depending on where you move it, and it will make it bigger and smaller onto that axis if that's what you select, or if you go to the corners, it will make it bigger or smaller on both axes onto that plane. I hope this makes sense. So you have the XZ plane, which is this arrow, and the plane. You have the ZY axis, which is top arrow and this arrow and that plane. And then you have the XY axis, and that will be this arrow, and this plane. So if you want to make it bigger onto the XY axis, you just grab it from here and you drag it and it will make it bigger. Now, these are the movement tools. You also have the rotate options onto the same menu. So you can rotate that whole circle over this way, or you can rotate it over that way. Let's say we make it a bit taller, and it's going to be easier to rotate, and that's what you can get with that. You can also rotate it like this, so you can rotate anything that you want. Again, even if you take just one line, you can just move that line into your space and everything will follow into let's say fluid movement. So this is how you can create all sorts of organic and interesting stuff. You can also use just a point. So if you just select a point, you can move that point up and everything will be adjusted to accommodate for the position of that point into your space. Okay, so let's find something else to modify. So let's say we take this one and we just make it a bit bigger, and you can do all sorts of crazy stuff like this. And this is where experimenting with your tools really comes in handy, because there's an infinite number of things that you can do with this tool, because the more faces and the more vertices and the more lines you have, the more you can modify it. And I would say just play with this tool and see what you can come up with. I really think the possibilities are endless, and it's one of those tools that Fusion 360 does so well and so beginner friendly. I think anybody can design things like this, and it doesn't have to be something crazy, something, I don't know, doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be something that you've made and is a bit different. And even if the lines were modified, you can still edit them in this form tool. So I don't know, let's say this is a vase. It just looks a bit weird, but hey ho. So because this is a shell and it doesn't have a bottom, we couldn't use it as a vase. And for that, we're just gonna double click the bottom edge, and we're gonna go and say fill hole, and we can leave it at the reduce star and say okay. Now when we finish form, we just select the whole thing and go to create and thicken. Now when we press thicken, we get the 3 millimeters. 3 millimeters should be fine. Let's press enter, and we have a body with a bottom and a thickness. And if we go to inspect it, we look at the selection analysis, which is one of these planes, and we can see that all around is 3 millimeters thick. So now it's actually a body that we can just send to the 3D printer and 3D print as a vase. So let me show you how I start learning this tool. And this is how a lot of people start creating their first vases. And this is one of the easiest way to create a really cool and interesting vase. So let's delete this whole thing. So I'm going to start with a sketch, and I'm going to start on the top plane. And for this sketch, I'm going to start with a square. I'm going to start from a center rectangle, and I'm going to go to, let's say, about 70 millimeters, and I'm just going to create a square. And like I said, you can actually create whatever shapes you want. It doesn't have to be a square. It can be something more organic. And I'm going to take all of these and create a circular pattern. So let's select the center point in the middle, and I want to make a bit more than, let's say 14. Doesn't meet it, kind of. So I'm going to say okay, and then I'm going to take one of these lines and drag it up to this other line, because I created a circular pattern. As soon as I move that line into place, all the other lines copy the same movement of this. Let's delete the unnecessary lines. So I'm just going to go around and hold that trim button. I'm just going to hold it and go over every single line that I don't need. So I'm going to go delete all of these. The shape itself, it doesn't matter. I want to teach you the idea of how to use this tool to create a really cool vase. So let's finish this sketch. I'm going to double click on one of these lines to select the whole perimeter, and I'm going to go to create a form. And in this form, I want to create an extrude from that line, and I'm going to create an extrude of 140 mil. And for the front faces, I'm going to go with 2 front faces. Okay. And let's double click on this line, and we're going to go to edit form, and we're just going to give it a little twist that way, and we're just going to make it a bit bigger. Okay. And we're going to do the same thing with the top. We're going to go to edit form, we're going to give it a bit of a twist, and we're going to keep it the same size. So let's not modify this one, but I want to double click onto this, modify it, and maybe go down a bit to create a bit of a different form. So in this case, because we have so many shapes on the bottom and it's a very complicated piece to weld together, for that reason this fill hole is not going to work. So any option you choose from here is basically going to be breaking the geometry of the object. So if I say okay to this and try to finish the form, I'm going to get a whole bunch of errors going through this. Let's click return, and we're going to say Ctrl Z to this fill hole. And anytime you have the same problem with this, you can choose the second method of closing this hole. We're going to say finish the form as it is, and we're going to go to surface and patch. So we're going to click this option, patch, and we're going to click this edge. And now you have 2 different bodies. You have the top section and the bottom section, and we can also do the same patch on the top. So let's go to surface, we click the patch, and we select this edge and say okay. And now when we select all of these and stitch everything together, that becomes a body. So now this is a body with 100% infill. Basically there's no hole inside, and we can fix that simple by going to solid and just create a shell, and then go 1 millimeter. There you go, you have an object with a shell of 1 millimeter, which is quite big, quite thick, and it's perfect for keeping coins on a shelf or keeping all sorts of things. Now let's say you modify this object and you're pretty happy with it, but it's too tall. You can simply go back to your timeline and take your form option and select your object. You can go back to editing your form straight from the timeline, and you can modify anything that you want onto this. So let's say we want to make it bigger, we want to make it smaller, you want to do it as a tray. And this is when You can do all the modifications, and when you finish this form, everything that you did so far in this timeline will convert to this object. So you're gonna lose this object and everything will be converted. All the stitching, all the shell, everything will convert to this object. So this is a very quick way to edit something that you've done so far, and maybe you want to change a little bit on it. So let's say that second line, it's a bit too much curve on it. So I'm going to go back to the form. I'm going to select that line and I'm going to edit that line and turn it a bit like that. Not too much, and I think that would be fine. So let's finish this form. I hope this helps you in your projects. I hope you're going to start experimenting with this and create something really cool. If you've never made anything like this in Fusion 360, I would be very happy to see what you guys do. Maybe send me a picture or send me a message that you've done something, and I would be very interested to see what you guys can come up with. I'm sure if you spend more time onto this form tool, you guys can create something really beautiful. As always, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up and maybe subscribe. It does help the channel grow. Thank you again for every person who messaged me on YouTube and other social media. I really appreciate your feedback. You guys have been amazing, especially with this series. Everybody was enjoying this series, so I'm going to try to make a few more episodes, maybe teach you how to use some other tools that you can create some stuff. And a lot of people ask me about that fidget toy with a handle, and I think my next video is going to be about that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.